podcast. On this particular episode, I'm talking to a gentleman by the name of Byron Landieu, and the reason that I'm speaking to Byron is he has a passion, and it's all about moisture, which might sound a little bit strange, but we'll get to that. But the passion is the thing that I'm really attracted to. And, as you're well aware, we're on a mission to change the building industry. And there are so many destructive practices and thought processes and philosophies that just create so much unnecessary pain for business owners and customers alike throughout the building industry. And I believe that, Byron has a very, very parallel attitude and a passion to be able to help people and change people's thinking. And obviously he's focused in the building industry as well. So it's just really exciting. And I always look forward to speaking to someone that has that focus and has that passion on the podcast, because the more people we get involved in the tool shed, and the more people we can get the word out that you can do things very, very differently to make the building industry a far, far more professional and enjoyable environment that it currently is. That kind of excites me. So, Byron, welcome to the Tool Shed. And can we just start by telling us just a little bit of your backstory, where you came from, and what you're doing now as far as moisture protection and keeping the water in where it's meant to be and all of that sort of stuff. How did you end up there?
Yeah, well, thanks for the opportunity to come on, Mick, and share my story. Probably like a lot of people who got into the construction industry, I was never really enthused by school. There was nothing that sort of grabbed out or stood out to me with anything that I was studying. And so I probably got into, being a tradie like most people, where you want to hang out with your mates on site, get into hard work, do good work for people. And originally started as a landscaper, and then, tried a couple of things and got into tiling. And had a wall and floor tiling business for nearly 20 years. Got introduced to waterproofing through the tiling industry when waterproofing came in. And then I got into teaching. The body started giving way after 20 years
story.
On tools, like most. And, wall and floor tiling's not the easiest gig. I sort of got introduced to teaching via that means. And, now predominantly what I do is I write educational programs for the construction industry, and a lot of waterproofing consulting, a bit of tiling consulting as well. And I'm pretty passionate about improving the current state of play in the construction industry.
So let's start to unpack that, because that's, as you heard in the introduction, it's something that I'm very passionate about. There are so many destructive and really unhelpful practices, philosophies, mindsets that are just creating the pain. And I just, it really frustrates me when I see something that is completely avoidable. All we need to do is, change our approach, change our mindset, and everybody benefits. So what are some of the things that, grind your gears, I suppose, when it comes to the building industry, the mistakes and errors that people make?
Well, first and foremost, through the training and the education that I typically run, which is, compliance for waterproofing in the construction industry, it wasn't until I got into teaching at Certificate 3 level at trade school, and got introduced to reading the standards, in particular the manufacturer's information, so technical data, that I realised how many mistakes I was actually making unknowingly. And so one of the most common issues that I see is that most people aren't aware of the mistakes that they're making. And there's been a heavy reliance on subbies to be an expert.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, what I see on the day to day is the mistakes that are getting made. Some of the mistakes that, particularly from a waterproofing and not so much tiling sense, but more waterproofing, the same mistakes I was making 15 years ago. So we haven't had an enforcement to continually improve in the industry in order to hold our qualification, but yet ultimately the work that we do out on the job site is ultra important because it's people's homes and houses. And, you know, when it comes to water, a waterproofing defect, well, there's a lot of health associated risks and extensive damage that are attributed to that.
I'd also imagine that any sort of errors that are made in that space can be really, really costly to rectify because it's always underneath a whole lot of other work.
It's a good point you
not
make.
On the surface.
Yeah, and, you know, on average from what I see, you know, and part of my daily roles apart from teaching is going out and doing leak inspections and consulting or you know, helping architects or builders with design, setting up schedules so that they get successful outcomes. Most of the waterproofing failures that I see happen in the 4 to 7 year mark. And, you know, the building elements that we're using, unless they're treated for external conditions, we're basically allowing these substrates that are easy deteriorable to be deteriorated with a lot of moisture that we can't see under the surface. And, you know, coupled with the, you know, thermal efficiency ratings that we must build to as now, we can't let that moisture escape or be controlled, and therefore it causes extensive damage. And we're in a leaky building syndrome in Australia, and it is the estimated figures that are getting thrown around on how much it's going to cost the economy over 20 to 30 years is in the hundreds of billions of dollars.
Wow.
So ultimately, it is going to affect us all in one way or another.
What are some of the issues, I suppose, the end user experiences with this? I'm sure that there's like health issues and all sorts of things that sort of show their head probably a lot later than you know, it may be years down the track if the job hasn't been done properly. What are some of the things that you see that the end user has to put up with?
It's a good question, and it's got a lot of different answers. I've seen everything from marriage breakups. One of my clients had a heart attack with the stress that were related to, you know, she lives in an apartment building. All the homeowners are fighting against each other and against the body corporate because they can't work out a fair and reasonable result. The issues are extensive and long term and continue to rear their head periodically. So the stress management is something that you can't really quantify in terms of money. An apartment building in Melbourne, 50 apartments, the homeowners and the body corporate all taking each other to court. Some of the people have bought these properties 12 months, 2 years ago, and now they're subjected to having to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to try and repair. And I use brackets, the great Australian dream. For a lot of people, it becomes the great Australian nightmare.
Yeah.
And the other health associated risks where we are starting to see some evidence on the seriousness of what mold over a long period of time can have to people's health across a whole range of different system, respiratory system, stress, just allergenic, issues. There's just a multitude of different ailments that are coming out the back of it, and so it is widespread, Mick. It's and it's alarming, and it is a pandemic.
I'm just sort of suspicious that it's not the lack of ability or skill that potentially causes these problems to happen. My suspicion is it's an attitude, it's a mindset. Like, people have the skill and the ability and the tools to do the job properly, but it's the mindset or the priority that they are focused on whilst doing the job. As an example, in Builders Business Black Belt, we go to great lengths to have lots of discussions in the group about what is your product as a builder. And, we land at your product is the quality of the customer's experience, and I always talk about, the homeowner, a year after they've had their home handed over, is speaking to a friend who's come round for a coffee, and they're asking him, what was it like building?
Yeah.
And the customer never runs around and goes, come over here and have a go at these miters. Like, how good are these miter joints? Like, they always talk about the builder was this, the builder was that, and they always talk about their experience. So in effect, the customer's experience is the builder's product. And that's what they need to be focused on and prioritising and building. And I'm assuming also with people that are doing the job that you're educating in, it's probably a similar thing. It's not, they've got the skills, the abilities, the technology to do the job properly, but there's a mindset issue. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's a good point you make, and it definitely is a mindset issue on a couple of different realms, and it probably also alters slightly depending on what type of buildings you're building and how many you're building.
Yeah.
So I think from a tradies perspective, many I think they undervalue the importance of what they're actually doing on the job.
Absolutely.
And the importance of what they're actually doing. We're so busy now, and you might have 20 jobs stacked up, and you're under the pump. You've got all these stresses. The cost of living is expensive, so you've got to get it done.
Yeah.
And when you're potentially working for a builder who builds at a high volume, you don't necessarily know the other tradies that you're working with, so the cohesiveness on the job is diminished, and you're probably actually, if you know the other guy who's coming after you and you're contacting each other regularly, then you're probably going to care a little bit more about the state that you leave their task in. So, for example, like preparing a substrate for waterproofing. The preparation of substrates for waterproof membranes is of utmost importance. And that ultimately it starts from the design stage, but every single trade who's involved in a wet area construction has an important role to play for the successful installation of the membrane. And, if we're using, the topic of this podcast for the case study, incorrect substrate preparation, where we're dealing with your carpenter, your concreter, your plumber, your wall lining installer, so your plasterers. Once one person does something wrong, that flows on, and then in a lot of cases, when you get to the waterproofing aspect of it, you can be done before you begin. So there's definitely an undervalue in the importance of what you're doing. From a builder's perspective, I used to be quite selective of the guys that I worked with, and I used to try and operate in that sort of higher tier because there is a higher emphasis on the quality outcome with the homeowner and a working relationship. Most people, what you hear is, when I've built a house or I do a reno, it was an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, it's the common story.
And, ultimately, building someone's house can shape their life. And when it goes pear-shaped, it can ruin it. And I'm seeing it get ruined, not probably for the entirety of their life, but for a significant portion. And I think it's a scar that never really heals.
Yeah, we're definitely singing off the same page of the hymn book, to use all of the church analogies you're preaching to the choir, because
and sometimes when I'm out on the job, I'm the bearer of bad news. And that's just part and parcel of what we're going to have to go through as an industry, to probably remove a little bit of the ego, and unlearn and relearn, because the industry is changing, whether we like it or not. But in saying that as well, Mick, it's not all negative.
No.
I'm seeing a lot of people in the game wanting to embrace the change and recognise that the construction industry, a lot of us, I'm mid-40s, and we've inherited a lot of this stuff, but we've also got 20 or 30 years left in the game. We don't want to be putting up with having to be subjected with these tough conversations.
Yeah, it's the industry is changing, whether people like it or not. Even as awful as it sounds, the last 3 years and going through the pandemic and what have you has caused a lot of challenges for many trades and definitely builders, and it's almost like a purge or a cleansing that the industry needed to have, as horrible as that sounds, because if you haven't got the right focus, if you haven't prioritized the purpose of your business, and what you're talking about, I think, is absolutely spot on. It's about the experience of the client. I think that you're 100% right when builders and trades don't realise the impact that they have on their clients' lives. You're building a home, you're building an environment in which the family grows up. If you build an environment which is comfortable to live in, that contributes to a healthy lifestyle, contributes to bringing the family together and creating memories, versus the kids seeing the parents argue because, the walls are cracking or there's damp or people are sick or what have you, because of the environment they're living in. That's a major, major impact. You're impacting multiple people's lives. And I know it sounds out there, but I just completely agree with you that builders and tradespeople need to understand that they're not just coming in, fitting a toilet or a light switch or building a house or whatever. They're creating an environment that's going to significantly impact the quality of people's lives into the future. So it's a great point.
And it does. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you anymore. It does, and it can be an extended period of time of grief for everyone. But on that note as well, when it's right, it creates lifelong memories for people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's again, in Black Belt, we quite often have conversations, and when we have our 2-day sessions in person and what have you, we quite often talk about the stories where the clients are crying, and we say, make them cry, but it's got to be tears of happiness,
Yeah.
And it's like the most builders and trades think that they're just doing something, that like I'm just paid to do that. I'm paid to build the house, the extension, the renovation, what have you. But the reality of the situation is, what we're discovering is clients, whether they're a client of a trades-based business or a builder is what they're really after is guidance, support, and protection.
Yeah.
And even the clients don't know that, but that's what they're really after. And if a business person can understand that that's what the client is after, is protection, support, and guidance,
Yeah.
and you build your business practices around that, you're going to have a very, very successful business, and you're going to have these people out there telling everybody who'll stand still long enough to listen about your business, recommending and referring you, and you end up getting a much, much better business. So we just need to get these mind shifts happening. So tell me about what are some of the things that you've got going on that people can tap into to start to learn better practices or to be able to tap into resources that you've got to help them. Like if they've already got the mindset switch and they go, shit, they're right, we need to focus on this. They reach out to you. What sort of resources, how do they interact with you to be able to benefit from what you do?
So I've got a couple of different things on the go, Mick. So one of my companies is Waterproof Awareness. And so within Waterproof Awareness, I run technical training and consulting for builders and subbies. So I assist the master builders of Victoria with running their internal and external waterproofing training. So I've worked with those guys now in conjunction with the Australian Institute of Waterproofing. I'm a committee member on the AIW, so I'm really passionate about helping strengthen the profile of the Australian Institute of Waterproofing to help educate the industry. So I've run some technical webinars, which people can purchase the pre-recorded series, which focuses on the key elements that are typical failure areas in waterproofing of wet areas, from bathrooms to balconies, product selection, how to develop a specification. So it's a really good introductory, in-depth series on how and what you should understand about waterproofing and what you should expect from your subcontractor. So, and with some of the other services, I help with design, leak inspections. I help homeowners understand if they've got an issue and what they can do. Unfortunately, some of the builders out there try to run or balk or not look after the client. So I'll help the client, the homeowner, understand if the area has been constructed compliantly and what is the cause of failure. So a lot of the failures that we see also are not the builder's fault, it's actually from a design issue. And when we have a design issue, even if you do everything right, the likelihood of failure dramatically increases. And so I help builders and architects with understanding design. Then one really exciting thing, which I've been working on for quite some time now, which is a digital waterproofing compliance and remediation tool, which is called Industry Best Construction. And so the intention of the platform is to help either tradies or builders or clients. They can buy a template of the platform or subscribe to the platform, and it actually creates a holistic portfolio of evidence of what they're doing on the job. And this is designed, fundamentally what I saw is communication and understanding of the compliance requirements in the construction industry is something that a large portion are missing. And so the platform helps multiple people communicate through the job. They can engage us as an external consultant. You can be involved in the platform. And so predominantly when we've been trialing the platform, we've helped multiple different builders either repair a wet area or build a brand new construction. And we can access the platform remotely if required. And then, basically uploads all of the design requirements, all of the documentation. You can communicate through the portal. So it's starting to develop that cohesiveness on the job again, and help educate people on the codes and standards while they're using the platform. So I think it's going to be a game changer, and we're going to be doing a virtual launch for that, late Feb next year. And I think, from an educational standpoint, we need to reintroduce education in a different format. It needs to be inclusive of what's currently out there. And, the classroom has a ceiling on it. We can't get the information out to everyone. Business Benchmark, Waterproof Awareness, Master Builders, whoever it is, you're only as wide as your marketing reach. So we need a multitude of different layers on where we can get the information out there and help train people the way that a lot of them have already learned, and that's whilst they're on the job. And that's what the platform's going to help people do. And I think it's going to be an absolute game changer. And we're really pumped to see it roll out. And it's something that we've worked on for, 4 or 5 years now. It's trialed and tested. And, the early feedback that we're getting from it is really, really positive. So I encourage any of the builders that are listening, or the subbies that are out there that want to enhance their understanding and their education in this space, reach out, and we're more than happy to help, mate. And there's no ego, it's non-biased, there's no bullshit. We're not attached to any particular brand. We're solely out to help improve education in the construction industry and ultimately deliver quality outcomes for all parties, be it the client, the builder, the subby, the product manufacturer.
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing just makes sense to me. I'm a big believer in, prevention is better than the cure, and you were talking about, it could be the fault of the design or this, and when the discussion sort of deteriorates into whose fault it is and everyone's covering their ass, the poor client just ends up with a really, really bad experience. So there goes the business's product. Like, it's a poor product now that the customer is having a bad experience, regardless of whose fault it is,
Yeah.
And I think that even like if your mindset is such that you really believe that the quality of my customer's experience is my product, and there is a problem and it isn't your fault, how you address that problem, how you communicate, support, guide, protect your customer through that problem determines their perspective or perception of the quality of their experience. Problems happen on building sites and building projects. All of them have problems.
Yeah.
And it is how you handle that problem can make the big difference with the relationship between the builder or the trades business and the customer. And I just really want to encourage people to start to get into this stuff like you're talking about. So they're getting into more of a preventative approach rather than when the shit hits the fan, who do I blame or how do I cover my ass? Because that just never, ever ends up well for the client. So based on that, like you were talking about, you're going to have a launch and so on and so forth. People listening to this, what do they need to do to sort of stay in the loop and be made aware of when the launch is happening or look at what you're putting together, so when you pull the trigger on it, they can be Johnny on the spot?
We've got a few social media handles. So Waterproof Awareness on Instagram, Facebook, and Industry Best Construction. So they're two separate entities, and on LinkedIn. So I encourage you to follow us on the social channels. Through the training that we've provided in the webinar series, we've got quite a large cohort of followers now, or database. So we'll be actively engaging, through our marketing channels as well. We'll be ramping up and really getting it out there to get as many people to come along. We'll be offering a free informative seminar as part of the virtual launch, and in conjunction with a couple of other of my colleagues from up in Sydney, we came up with an idea about running a couple of live seminars once the terrific COVID started to disappear. And that was initially called Waterproofing and Beyond, Waterproofing in 2022 and Beyond. So we ran a couple of seminars up in New South Wales, so Parramatta and Newcastle, and went off tap. We had a combined total of over 300 there, and then we ran one down in Melbourne in October. We had a couple of hundred attend there, and then we're also looking to run the seminar up in Sydney and in Melbourne again next year. All independent consultants, all trying to improve the industry. So for people to stay engaged, just follow us on social media or reach out to me directly. You can jump on the website and email me directly, and we're more than happy to help and, really change. Well, it's about preparing the industry for what's coming as well, Mick, I must add. So the building commissioner the building commissioner's office up in New South Wales, they've gone leaps and bounds forward by really grabbing the industry by the scruff of the neck, particularly in the Class 2 building sector. And now I understand they're transitioning into the Class 1 housing sector. And I encourage all the other states to, follow suit. One of the issues in the game is every state seems to operate under a totally different set of rules.
Yeah. Not confusing at all.
Oh, mate, it's a bloody nightmare. And we really need to start thinking about a national trade licensing scheme, or further to that, an international trade licensing scheme, because we're also seeing the demographic in the construction industry are changing dramatically. There's a lot more English as a second language workforce now. And I encourage that. A lot of the outcomes that I had when I was teaching at trade school level was to English as a second language students. A lot of them had never been to school before, and we were able to help them achieve a qualification. And the gratification coming out the back of it was, it was inspiring, and it was a really good feeling. So we need to nurture that in our landscape and provide resources that can help encourage that. And currently, some of the dramas that we're going to be faced with is, how do people who can't understand technical documents because, English isn't their first language, how are we going to train them in the new changes that ultimately affect everything that we're talking about, Mick?
Yeah, great question. And obviously you're doing something about it. So lots of big issues there that need to be addressed, and hopefully they will be addressed over time. But getting some sort of central set of standards so it is not so confusing and different from state to state would probably be
it's a good starting point. We've and it is encouraging, mate. It's not all doom and gloom. I've got to be honest. I understand when you're on the tools, there's not much time for anything else. You're under the pump, you get up in the morning, you've got 1,000,001 different things to do. You're working hard. There's a lot of stresses from, multiple different sources, and now that I'm not actively on the tools all the time anymore, I still have a crack every now and then. The body's quick to tell me why I got off it initially. But there are a lot of people like myself who are working behind the scenes, can see what's coming, and trying to help the transition move as smoothly as possible. So much so that, I was lucky enough to go over to New Zealand with David Previty, who's the new president of the Australian Institute of Waterproofing, and we went over to form an affiliation with the Waterproof Membranes Association in New Zealand, who have had extensive issues with the leaky building syndrome for decades. And so from an association standpoint, we're looking to form affiliations to work with each other, where we've had, from two different countries, we've had really similar issues, but the reality is in Australia, we're so much bigger than New Zealand, so the costs are going to be a lot more significant economically. But there is a lot of positive stuff happening, and I do see some significant changes over the next 5 years.
Yeah, it's
which is positive. It's great.
Yeah, it is. It's exciting. And like as I said at the start, I was excited to get you on the podcast because it's just great to meet and connect with people who have that passion to change things in a big way, can see that a lot of the pain and the challenges that are in the industry are mostly unnecessary. We just need to change mindset and practice to fix them. So, it's exciting stuff listening to what you're up to. Always like to find out a little bit more about the guests that we bring on the podcast. I've got a couple of questions that have got nothing to do with waterproofing, but just to find out a little bit more about you. So they're questions without notice. You may have heard them asked before, but the first one is, if you weren't doing what you're doing now, what would be the job, the vocation, the pathway that you would love to do? For whatever reason, I'd like to pilot a helicopter, but that's me.
Oh, yeah, mate, I'd also like to do that. I actually enjoy what I do. I think, everything you do has got its challenges. And I enjoy what I do. I love the outdoors, mate. I like my surfing and, keeping active. So I'd probably, wouldn't mind doing something along those lines, being an active tour guide and experiencing the wilderness and the bush. And I would say I live a, pretty well-balanced life. I enjoy having fun, mate. It's not all serious. I think those who know me know I'm a little bit of a larrikin in a good sense. I was probably a bit wild when I was younger, like most tradies, mate. But yeah, I got this year was pretty full on, mate. I got married, which was great. I lost my mum, a couple of months ago, which was quite challenging. She's she really backed me and showed a lot of belief in me, and I think and she's helped me really set up a lot of the things that she just told me to go for it and back me and gave me the limited resources that she had to help get me underway. And so I'm pretty passionate about making this stuff work and helping the industry improve and helping improve the education, mate. And I probably came from a pretty limiting mindset for quite some time, and so I'll probably look at helping to mentor people and help them achieve what they can out of life.
Yeah, I noticed there's a few boards in the background. I had to ask, are they surfboards or are they stand-up paddle boards?
I'm not stand-up paddleboard age yet, mate. No, they're still.
I am.
They're surfboards. No, mate, and I say that with jest. Stand-upping's fun, but yeah, no, they are all surfboards. I mean, we live in a pretty small place down on the coast in Victoria, and so my office is also where I have my surfboard rack. So. It's the missus doesn't really like having them in here because they take up so much room, but I've got nowhere else to store them, mate. So what can you do? It's a bit hard to get rid of your boards.
It's impossible. It's not something that should even be expected. Second question, 3 parts. That you're having a dinner party and you've got 3 spare seats. You're allowed to invite whoever you want from any time in history. alive or dead. Who are the 3 people that you're going to invite to your dinner party?
Oh shit, that's yep. Who am I going to invite? Well, I studied a lot of Bob Proctor stuff, mate. I've got to be honest. It was
So he's still alive?
Hey?
He's still alive?
No, he's not anymore, mate.
Oh, isn't he? I missed that one.
Yep, he died not long ago, mate. So, yeah, I'd like to invite him. His material helped sort of change the way I think and, allowed me to develop the awareness to have a crack at some big goals, mate, and, become a bit more well-rounded. Probably invite me mum, mate.
Yeah.
She's always the life of the party. She's, a good, fun person and got along with everyone and made everyone feel welcome. And the final one, geez. You have put me on the spot here, mate. Who would I like to invite? You're going to have to let me sit on that one for a little bit, mate.
Okay. There's too many choices. That's what it is.
There is too many choices, mate.
That's the trouble when we've got too many choices. We don't know what to pick. Fear of missing out, I think it is.
Yeah, fear of missing out.
Yeah.
It's you're going to have to leave that one with me, mate.
We'll get back to you. But,
we'll get back to you.
It was really, really nice to hear you say you'd bring your mum back to the party. Wasn't expecting that. That was a very, very nice touch. Mate, I would really like to thank you for putting the time aside to come onto the podcast and share your knowledge. We'll be making sure we put the relevant links and so forth in the descriptions for the podcast so people can stay in touch for when you're doing the launches or be able to get involved in any of the webinars or seminars that you're going to be doing again in the future. It's one of the things that I'm always thinking about is that to build a successful business, you can't just be a good tradesman because, as you've alluded to through this conversation, there is so much more that the business owner is required to be aware of, so many practices that they are being and will continue to be required to refine and improve to be able to stay in business. And I think that the most important thing is that we're focused on the right thing. We're building a business where our focus is on creating a great experience, not just for the client in the moment, like having great conversations with them and supporting them through the project, but as you've outlined, the quality of the client's experience, particularly with what you're focusing in on with the waterproofing stuff, can affect them years into the future. And as we've discussed, it can affect the family life and it can affect health. It can affect their finances. And when you're doing waterproofing on a project today, you're probably not thinking about the impact that can have or will have for your client in the future. And it's so important to understand that and be able to get support from people and organisations such as yourself to make sure we're doing the best we can to give people the best outcome in the future. So it's just been sensational talking to you. I really hope that people reach out. I think it's waterproofawareness.com, or is it .com.au?
No, just .com for the website, and industrybest.com.au for the digital platform. And we've also got another tool that we've helps monitor the waterproofing install, so called the filler gauge or the seal comb. It's a bit with the light in the background. And that's sealcomb.com.au. You can purchase those tools, which are a really good inspection tool for waterproofing. But yeah, Mick, I wanted to say I'm really grateful for the opportunity and for you guys reaching out. And mate, we're here to help, and we're coming from the right spot. And we want to see the industry improve. And really appreciate the opportunity to come on and have a chat, mate.
Yeah, appreciate you being generous with your time and your knowledge in today's podcast. So, folks, that is it for this episode of the Tool Shed. Please reach out. All the relevant links will be in the description. And it's really inspiring and exciting to know that there are people like Byron with the passion and building the tools and the support and the resources to be able to help builders and other trades build a better business, a better quality business, and get rid of some of the unnecessary pain that is created by the way that we're currently doing and thinking about our business. So I hope this was helpful. I hope it inspired you. I hope you reach out to Byron and get into the resources that he's creating for you to be able to prevent problems in the future, help you build a better business, help you build better experiences for the long term for your clients. And I think that it's going to impact the industry as a whole, which is super exciting. It's what we're all about. And we're always looking for people and processes and resources, pardon me, like Byron, to bring onto the Tool Shed. So that's it for this episode. We'll be back again with another episode of the Tool Shed before you know it. That is all. Bye for now.